Thanks for dropping in and welcome to Wetblasting 101. Today we're going to talk about blast medias. For the most part, the medias that you use in a wet blast machine are the same that you use in a dry. The real difference is you can go to much finer medias in a wet machine and the consistency is much better in a wet machine. You're blending everything in a slurry in the hopper, so it's a perfect homogeneous blend when it gets to the blast gun. Dry machines are pneumatically fed and you tend to get coughing effects or non-consistency in the feeds. And there's also a hot spot in a dry blast gun, which is the highest velocity part of the nozzle. And the wet, because you're mixing water as it goes through the nozzle, tends to eliminate that. So today we're going to talk about several of the most popular medias that are used. That's going to be glass bead, ceramic bead, and aluminum oxide. On the website, wetblasting.com, you can go into there, you're going to see the abrasive section, and there's all sorts of different medias. These are the most common, but basically, as long as the specific gravity is over 1 and it sinks, you can use it in a wet blast machine, including baking soda. You have to supersaturate the water, and when the water can't absorb anymore, you're going to have media. So baking soda works as well. Let's take a look at ceramic and glass bead first. So what I've done here is I set some samples aside here. I've got aluminum, I've got stainless steel, and I got brass. I blasted these in my trusty model, my Vixen model 915 and 1215. So what we have up here is glass bead, and here is ceramic bead. Ceramic bead is very popular in Europe. It's becoming more and more popular here in the States. It's about 7 times as expensive as glass bead, but it lasts 30 to 40 times as much as glass bead, and it doesn't break down. So that keeps consistency in the finish. So as you can see here, this is the substrate, which is just bar stock, so it's kind of rough, but you can see what the shine that you're going to get. And aluminum stuff is really popular for the CNC machining shops. We can take out the tooling marks, and we can deburr, and we can leave that finish for anodizing. The same type of finish will happen on stainless steel. You can see a nice shiny finish. This is real popular with the medical industry and also for weldments. If you weld steel together, especially stainless steel, you're going to get those burn marks in the weld area and just an inconsistency in the finish and the look overall. The glass bead and the ceramic bead will blend that, make it shiny and make it look real pretty. Brass is always one of my favorites, and this is done in all sorts of different restoration, but you just get a really beautiful bright finish when you do brass. And you can see this is really fine. The stuff that we have here is 270 mesh. I would consider that on the fine side. There are finer glass bead medias, but gets expensive. This is kind of the finest that you use in wet in most cases. This is even finer. This is the ceramic. It's hard to get a close-up of this, but if you felt this, it's really, really fine. So you're going to get pretty much the same kind of finish. You're going to see that substrate, it's kind of ugly looking, just bar stock, gives a real nice finish, and you see no hot spots in there. It's a real nice finish on that. Same here with the stainless steel, and again, this would probably be a better media for doing the weldments because glass bead has got a higher specific gravity. It's heavier. It's going to hit a little harder. It's going to work a little faster on those welds. And again, back to the brass, which just looks beautiful when you blast it. Keep in mind that there's a varying degree of mesh sizes. We just chose these because I had them in the machine and I like the finish look. But give me a call if you want to talk about the beads. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. Let's move on and take a look at aluminum oxide. Okay, we looked at the spherical particles, which were the glass bead and the ceramic, and that's peening the surface. That's a great finish to get the brightness up, and it makes a really good finish for anodizing or plating. This also can be used in the plating, but you're going to get a little bit of a duller finish. So aluminum oxide is an angular media. It's actually going to leave a very fine topography. So I don't know how well you can see this, but this is really fine. This is a 150 mesh aluminum oxide, and then we have a much coarser 60 aluminum oxide. And you can see that you have kind of a really pretty looking finish, but it's dull, especially when you compare it right next to what glass bead will do. And this is brass, obviously, and that's got a good finish to it. And we're back to, here's aluminum. This would be really good for plating, so you're going to be able to deburr a part. A CNC machine part is going to have a lot of tooling marks, and it's going to leave burrs. Somewhere between the 60 and the 150, you're going to be able to deburr the part, You're going to give it this real pretty finish, and your platers and your anodizers are just going to love that look. And stainless steel, same thing here. You're going to see that it's more of a dull finish. Let me just grab one of the ceramics, and you can see that it's just a duller finish. So it's a faster cleaning with the aluminum oxide, but it's going to leave that topography. So that's going to give a good tooth for plating and coatings, but it's going to leave fingerprints. So you don't want to leave that bare. That would either be painted or coated afterwards. There's a lot of different variants in the aluminum oxide meshes. You could get up to a 600 mesh aluminum oxide, so very, very fine. And because the Vixen has such a strong pump, most wet blasts don't even think about using 60 mesh. We could go down to a 24 mesh. That's really uncommon for a wet blast, but when you have a true industrial pump like a Vixen, you don't have to worry about that. I showed you what the bar stock looked like with ceramic, glass bead, and aluminum oxide. Let's take a look at some real parts that you're going to see out there. Obviously, this is just a copper fitting. You can see what it looks like before blasting. Here's a really nice finish with aluminum oxide, just a really homogeneous look. Your plater would love a part like that. And then even more brilliant is the glass bead. This is the fine glass bead on this part. This would look really good for anodizing if you used a color. Black is going to look pretty similar here. You'll see a little bit of a difference with the bright finish, but when you get into the color anodizing, this is where you want to be. This is where we really do well, and these are CNC machine parts, and you can see there's heavy tool marks. This is very common. You're going to see burrs in these areas here, and the wet blasting will do both. It'll deburr the part, and it'll give you this finish. What they're doing out there, if they're not wet blasting, is they're hand deburring. So they'll come in here, they'll deburr all these areas, and then they still have to blast if they're going to anodize or plate to get that look. You've got to have this look in order to get a really nice looking part. I hope the video on the media for wet blast machines was helpful. If you have ideas for videos in the future, please send me an email, rick@wetblasting.com. Thanks for visiting.